Okay, let's unpack this. Just when you thought the O.J. Simpson story was safely relegated to history books, his death this past year, well, it opened the door to a jaw-dropping new layer of legal and financial drama.
It really did.
So today, we are diving into the sources that detail the final, messy financial chapter of the infamous trial of the century.
And that's our mission here. We are pulling out the essential nuggets from sources on his death, the complex lawsuits that followed, and really analyzing why a case that's decades old continues to just dominate headlines.
It's incredible.
We aren't just recounting the history, we're trying to figure out what the final price tag really is.
And the central tension right now is it's just so stark. On one side, you have a California attorney, Ronald Slates, suing the estate for over $1 million in unpaid legal fees.
And he's claiming he represented Simpson right up until his death.
Exactly. But then at the same time, the estate's executor, Malcolm Laverne, has accepted a staggering $58 million claim from Ron Goldman's family.
$58 million. That figure includes all the accrued interest since the original 1997 civil judgment. But here is the critical financial reality you have to grasp.
Okay.
Laverne initially valued the entire estate at only somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000.
Wait, hold on. How can the estate accept a $58 million debt when it only has, what, $500,000 in assets? Does that make the judgment completely worthless?
It's worthless right now, yes, but the claim itself, it acts as a perpetual land. Think of the $58 million as an eternal IOU.
Okay, so it's always there in the background.
Always. Laverne valued the accessible probate estate. That's the assets Simpson held directly in his name, like some bank accounts, at that low figure. But a lot of Simpson's wealth, especially his NFL pension, is legally structured to be exempt from creditor claims.
Ah, so that's why it's always been so complicated to collect.
Precisely. So, while the Goldman family has been promised the lion's share of what's available after taxes, the reality is that the $58 million judgment, it's largely unenforceable. Unless, they uncover some previously hidden asset.
So that huge number is really more of a symbolic victory then. It just reinforces their, 27-year pursuit of justice.
It's a symbolic victory that keeps the pressure on, absolutely. It ensures that any new money is instantly diverted to them.
Well, Simpson's death this past year at 76 from prostate cancer, it instantly became top news. I mean, it interrupted major programming. 29 years after the murder trial first captivated everyone.
That media frenzy alone just shows how deeply this story is still embedded in the American consciousness. It was impossible to ignore.
And the public reaction was just so divisive, wasn't it?
Fascinatingly so. If you look at the official response, the White House sent condolences to his family, but, and this is notable, they failed to mention the victims at all. Not Nicole Brown Simpson, not Ron Goldman.
Wow. That sets a tone right there.
It does. And then you had the extremes on social media. People like his old house guest, Kato Kalin, offered, measured public condolences to the children.
But on the other end of the spectrum,
the disdain was sharp and immediate. You had Caitlyn Jenner tweeting, "Good riddance," and then Fred Goldman's comment that Simpson's death was no great loss to the world.
I mean, you can feel decades of pain in that comment, the feeling that justice was just evaded.
And this is where the story gets truly strange, even after his death. These persistent, unverified allegations just surfaced again.
You're talking about the bodyguard?
His former bodyguard, a man named Avella, insists he has a thumb drive with an audio recording of Simpson confessing to the murders.
That sounds like something straight out of a movie. Has anyone actually heard this supposed tape?
No, and that's the whole issue. Avella refused to play it at a news conference. He cited this very vague, ongoing federal drug investigation.
Which sounds incredibly convenient.
It does. And to add to that, investigators in Minnesota, where police had seized some thumb drives from him earlier, they officially denied ever finding a confession recording. So for now, it's just speculation.
But it fuels that desire for a final, conclusive answer.
It absolutely does.
So to understand why this estate battle and all this lingering hatred are so intense, we have to quickly go back to the beginning, the 1994 murders.
The savage attack on Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman outside her condo. Sources describe it as an overkill, a rage killing. Nicole was nearly decapitated.
And that brutality was a key part of the prosecution's story, right?
It was crucial. They built a timeline designed to place Simpson at the scene. They had Goldman leaving the restaurant to return her mother's glasses around 9:50 p.m.
Okay.
And the murders are estimated to have happened around 10:15 p.m., a time that lines up perfectly with a neighbor hearing Nicole's dog, Kato, barking anxiously.
And that 10.1 fem time was the key window. It allowed Simpson just enough time to commit the crime.
Dispose of evidence, and get back to his Rockingham estate by 11 p.m. for his scheduled limo to the airport.
Which, of course, brings us to the drama before the trial even began, the white Ford Bronco chase.
I mean, that wasn't just news. It was a profound cultural moment. Televised live, interrupting the NBA Finals, watched by an estimated 95 to 100 million people.
It's still hard to wrap your head around that number. 100 million people watching a slow-speed chase. And the items they found in the Bronco afterward were so bizarre. His passport, a gun, and makeup adhesive. A fake mustache and goatee.
Right. The prosecution argued it was proof he planned to flee before his suicidal mindset took over during the chase itself.
He did leave that note saying, "All I did was love Nicole." The narrative was immediately split. Was he running, or was he just desperate?
And once that chase ended, the focus shifted entirely to the courtroom. But the Dream Team strategy wasn't just about challenging the evidence, it was about changing the whole conversation.
So if the prosecution's evidence, the blood, the DNA, the footprints, if it was so compelling, how did the defense create enough doubt to get an acquittal?
That is the multi-million-dollar question. The evidence was staggering. You had Simpson's blood at the Bundy crime scene, blood from him and the victims of the Bronco, blood on socks in his bedroom, and those bloody size 12 Bruno Magli shoe prints.
So they couldn't just dismiss it?
No, they had to discredit the people who collected it. And this is where they came up with the two crucial plays that changed the entire case.
Let's start with the Furman factor.
Detective Mark Furman. He's the one who claimed to have found the bloody glove at Rockingham. He became the defense's #1 target.
They didn't just expose him as a liar, though.
No, they used his racism to suggest a massive police conspiracy. They found those tapes of Furman using racial slurs dozens of times. That allowed the defense to pivot the entire case from a double murder to a trial about LAPD corruption.
And then, crucially, he pleaded the Fifth Amendment when they asked him if he planted evidence. That had to be devastating for the prosecution.
Absolutely devastating. When a police officer refuses to testify because he might incriminate himself, it just suggests something is fundamentally corrupt, whether he actually planted the glove or not.
It poisons the well for all the other evidence he touched.
It does. And then you have this a second and maybe the most memorable moment of the entire trial.
The glove demonstration.
Pure courtroom theater. Prosecutor Chris Darden asks Simpson to try on the bloody gloves, and they visibly appear not to fit.
And that one moment basically overshadowed everything else.
It did. It didn't matter that it was later suggested the gloves might have shrunk from being frozen and unfrozen. In that moment, for the jury, perception was reality, and it led to Johnny Cochran's career-defining line.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
The line that arguably won the case.
And if you connect this to the bigger picture, the timing was everything. This trial happened not long after the Rodney King beating and the acquittal of those officers.
Exactly. For a large portion of the black community, this verdict felt like a symbolic balancing of the scales, a moment of payback for a justice system they felt was stacked against them.
And the defense actively leaned into that narrative. I read that they even changed photos in Simpson's home before the jury visited.
They did. Sources say they replaced pictures of his white friends with pictures of black friends to really push that perception that he was being targeted by a racist police force.
So the verdict comes down, not guilty on both counts, delivered after less than 4 hours of deliberation.
And the reaction just showed how divided the country was. Cheers on one side, outrage on the other, a perfect reflection of the racial split over the entire case.
But while the criminal trial closed the door on jail time, the civil case filed by the Goldman and Brown families immediately opened the door to financial payback.
And this is a vital distinction for you to understand. The burden of proof is drastically different.
Can you just clarify that contrast for us?
Of course. In the criminal trial, the prosecution had to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a very high bar.
Right.
But in the civil trial, the families only had to prove he was liable based on a preponderance of the evidence, which basically means it was more likely than not that he did it. Over 50% certainty.
A much lower standard. And the civil jury found that he met it.
They did. In 1997, a predominantly white jury found him liable for the deaths and awarded $33.5 million. And the civil trial also definitively concluded he owned the Bruno Magli shoes that left the footprints.
Even though he called them ugly-ass shoes in his deposition.
Exactly. So the financial punishment was served, even when criminal justice wasn't.
But then actually getting that money became another decades-long fight. He never paid a cent voluntarily.
The families were relentless. They got court orders to seize and auction off memorabilia, including his Heisman Trophy. I think that raised almost $500,000.
Wow. And then things got even weirder with the book, If I Did It.
Oh, that was a truly controversial move. Simpson wrote this book, styled as a hypothetical confession, but it read just like the real thing.
And the court ended up giving the rights to the Goldman family.
They did. They stripped the rights from Simpson, gave them to the Goldmans, who then published it. A really unique form of legal retribution.
And the final fall, of course, was the Vegas incident in 2007.
Right. Arrested for armed robbery and kidnapping after storming a hotel room to steal sports memorabilia he claimed was his.
And he was convicted on 12 counts, incredibly 13 years to the day after his acquittal.
He was sentenced to 9 to 33 years. And while the judge denied it was payback, that maximum sentence was seen by many as long-delayed justice for the murders.
So if we step back and look at all this,
Hmm.
the acquittal, the civil liability, the Vegas conviction, who was the killer?
This is where we can apply the principle of Occam's razor. It basically states that you should prefer the simpler explanation, the one that requires the fewest assumptions.
Okay. And when we apply that to this case?
When we apply that to the source material, O.J. Simpson remains the most logical suspect. The motive is there, a long, documented history of domestic violence against Nicole. There were chilling 911 calls.
A clear pattern of behavior.
A very clear pattern. And then you have that staggering forensic evidence. The DNA mix of Simpson and the victims in his Bronco, blood on the gloves, the bloody footprints from shoes he owned, the sheer quantity of it all points in one direction.
Yet these alternative theories gain so much traction. The most persistent one points to his son, Jason Simpson.
That theory is complex. It suggests Jason, who reportedly had a history of rage issues, committed the murders, and O.J. just arrived later to cover it up.
But why doesn't that theory really hold up for investigators?
Because it's almost entirely circumstantial. It struggles to account for the physical evidence. It doesn't easily explain O.J.'s blood at the scene, or the mix of his DNA and the victim's DNA in the Bronco. Occam's razor prefers the simpler answer.
And the other big one involved the serial killer, Glenn Rogers.
Right. The claim that O.J. hired him. But the critical contradiction there is that sources indicate Rogers was actually in jail at the time of the killings, which would make his confession impossible.
So what does this all mean for us today with this new legal fight over his estate?
The central tragedy remains. Despite a mountain of evidence, despite the civil judgment, and despite the fact that by 2014, something like 83% of Americans believed he was guilty, the case is still officially unsolved by the LAPD.
And the financial ramifications, as we're seeing, linger to this day.
Exactly. The attorney's lawsuit, the outstanding $58 million Goldman claim. It all reinforces the failure of the system to provide full and final justice.
Simpson's story really did become this endless refrain in America's unfinished business with race, the justice system, and celebrity influence.
It highlights a system where one case can deliver a verdict in a civil court while completely evading justice in the criminal one.
Which raises an important final question.
It does, and it's one for you, the listener, to consider as we close this deep dive. If those recent claims of a confession tape, the one the bodyguard alleges he has, were suddenly proven true and released today, would that dramatically change the public's perspective on the trial's fairness? Or would it simply validate the prevailing suspicion held by millions for decades that justice was successfully evaded back in 1995?